Hi guys, it's Mrs. Wallace again. This is the other question I thought I would just do a video on. This is the 2017 free response question. And I thought this was a good question because it really focused on a couple of the concepts that are perhaps most important related to the factor market. And just to lay this out, the question starts with a chart, and kind of keep in mind that we have a firm that's essentially making choices about workers, right? How many workers to hire? That's the key question that we ask in the factor market. But at the same time, we also know that the workers are kind of enhanced, their productivity is enhanced by the use of some machines, right? Noted as K for capital, even though the word starts with C, K tends to represent capital. So with one machine, right, a worker might actually be producing, one worker might be producing 10 of the product, whereas with two machines, the worker's more productive, right? Marginal product is even greater, and ultimately they'd be producing 20 of the product, right? One worker. Kind of note the way that this is giving us a sense of workers plus the enhancement of the productivity of a worker with the use of capital, okay, which is a general theme in the product market. Generally, workers that have really quality and access to capital are more productive, which is what makes wages in some countries, in some cases, higher than others. Countries like the US that has a lot of access to capital. So we're asked the first question: if the firm uses 1 unit of capital and 1 unit of labor, okay, so they're operating here, producing 10, will it be operating with constant, increasing, or decreasing returns to scale, okay? So just as a reminder, the long run ATC is what we're always looking at when we're considering increasing, decreasing, or constant returns to scale. And what you're really looking at graphing is this is on the y-axis is your ATC. So in a section of the ATC curve that's decreasing, we have a ATC curve that is decreasing. Kind of here where you might have constant returns to scale, the ATC itself might be constant. And where the ATC is increasing, you would have kind of decreasing returns to scale, otherwise known as diseconomies of scale. Here is quantity, okay? So the idea is what's happening to your long-run ATC over greater and greater and greater quantity, okay? And the basic essence of economies of scale, which are generally a really good thing for a firm, meaning as they're producing more, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. The basic idea or definition of economies of scale is if you are actually increasing your input, say at 50%, you're actually increasing then your output at something greater than 50%. So you're getting a great deal of bang for your buck. The opposite's happening in diseconomies of scale. You're putting in an increase of resources of 50%, but you're only pumping out maybe like 10% increase in output, okay? So there's a efficiency concept that's really happening with economies of scale versus diseconomies of scale, and an investment that's paying off with economies of scale and not paying off with diseconomies of scale, okay? And economies of scale, again, where the downward sloping long-run ATC is sometimes also referred to as increasing returns to scale, okay? So just kind of have some of that vocabulary down, okay? So if we're here, okay, I could do this question in 2 ways. One thing I could do is I could simply look at between 1 worker and 2 workers, right? What's ultimately kind of happening, and also between 1 worker and 2 workers, I'm doubling my resource, right? But I could double my resource in terms of machines. So from 1 worker and 1 machine, I could be at 2 workers and 2 machines. So if I double my labor and double my capital, I can look at what happens to my product, right? I actually am increasing my output much, much, much more than just doubling, okay? If I was doubling, I'd be at 20, but here I have 50, right? So this is definitely economies of scale. I can note that this is definitely economies of scale or increasing returns to scale. Another thing I could do if I wanted to double check this, am I definitely at increasing returns to scale, is I could see what's happening with ATC. So going from this one worker to two workers and one machine to two machines, what's happening to my ATC when I double my resources? Well, if I operate here, right, I'm paying for one worker, which is $200, and I'm paying for one machine, so my costs are $275. On average, if I'm making 10, my costs are $27.50. That's my ATC. If I actually produce with two workers and two machines, now I'm going to be $400 worth of worker pay, $200 per worker, $150 worth of machine pay, $75 each, and that's $550, okay? And if I look at that, now I'm producing 50, my ATC is only $11, okay? So I clearly have reduction in ATC as a result, and I'm pumping out 50 compared to 10, okay? So that's how I would graph that. So that kind of confirms that this is increasing returns to scale. The rest of this question is a little bit easier, okay? Now we're going to assume for the rest of this question that we're producing with 2 units of capital and 3 units of labor. So 3 units of labor, 2 units of capital, and I'm producing here, okay? And the first question is, what is the marginal product for the 3rd unit of labor? Well, if there was 2 workers, they would be doing 50, 3 workers, 75. So my marginal product, kind of the difference between the 2nd and the 3rd worker, is 25, okay? 25 units. That's answer to B, I. For B, 2I, did the firm experience diminishing marginal returns with the additional worker? And just by looking at this, I can say yes, because between 1 and 2 workers, there was a 30 unit increase. When we hired the 3rd worker, there's only a 25 unit increase, okay? So this is increasing your returns, your total returns, right? This is still an increase in total product, but we have a diminishing marginal return, right? The 3rd worker is only bringing in 25, whereas the 2nd worker brought in 30. So this is, this is diminishing marginal returns, okay? And then explain using the numbers from the table. I would just note, the 3rd worker has an MP of 25, whereas the 2nd worker had an MP of 30, okay? So you could certainly use the words in the chart. Calculate the firm's average total cost for its current level of production, okay? And this is just really confirming what is ATC. It's your total cost over the quantity that you're producing, okay? So if we have 3 workers and we have 2 capital, what would be my total cost? Well, each worker is $200. So if I have 3 of them, that's $600. And I have 2 machines at a cost of $150, okay? Because each one is $75. That's $750. When I take that $750 and just divide it by 25, okay? I'm sorry, by 75, my bad. Dividing it by 75 because that's what my units are, right? So I'm just total cost over the quantity. This is just going to easily be $10, okay? Sorry, $10, okay? And then lastly, and I just have to move my arm a little bit here, sorry. If the firm's output is sold in a competitive market, what is the lowest output price at which the 3rd unit of labor would be hired? What they're asking for in this question is essentially, what is the lowest output price in the product market, okay? And whenever you're asked, and you're doing a factor market question, to figure out the price in the product market, there's an easy way to do that. The first thing that we know is that we're assuming this firm is profit maximizing, okay? They're hiring 3 workers, and we know the MRP, okay, should be equal to the MRC, okay? This gives us basically a formula that we can work with and just do a little algebra. I know the MRC because that's the wage rate, right? That is $200, okay? So if the MRP is 200, they would be profit maximizing. The MRP should be equal to the MRC. That's how they knew how many workers to hire. The MRP is comprised of kind of 2 things, right? The marginal product and the price. Well, the price of the product is what we're looking for, but the marginal product is something that I know because I was asked that question earlier. What was the marginal product of the 3rd worker hired? Marginal product of the 3rd worker hired is 25. okay, this number right here. So if I know that the third worker was hired with marginal product of 25, in order for this marginal revenue product to equal 200, the price of the product would have to be $8, okay, which is my answer. Okie doke, I hope that helped. Have a good rest of the weekend.